Welcome to another episode of Reseller Evolution. I'm Scott.
And I'm Carl.
And today we're talking about thrifting. And we're going to talk about our experiences at thrift stores and the types and all sorts of stuff. We're just going to jump right into all sorts of things with thrift stores. But first, what do we want to talk about, Carl?
Well, I want to know how was your last week? What exciting things has happened to you in the reselling world in the last week?
Okay, well, last week I still haven't started listing because I got my new booth and I've just been absolutely swamped trying to get that thing together. And sales have been so strong at the booth, and I hate sounding like a broken record on this, but I can't believe how well the booth is doing.
That's so good.
Yeah, so I've been just trying to keep up and start a new booth. So it's been very difficult. I got lots of open space to keep putting things in there, but I had my biggest day ever, and that was Saturday.
Oh, really? That sounds amazing. Like, for me, things have slowed down, but if your booth is doing well, especially considering you have 3 now too, you have a lot of booth fees to feed too.
Yeah, well, I mean, fortunately, I'm at a location where the booth fees are very reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, we do hit that 13%, which is pretty standard, I think. A lot of places charge 10%, and then they charge you 3% every time there's a debit or credit card transaction. But we just go 13% across the board, and we don't get hit with that extra transaction charge, which it kind of works out at the end of the day. But the actual rent for the space is very, very reasonable. So that makes a big difference, right? So I think I know if it was much higher, like in a lot of places, definitely would be probably at one booth. But sales are fantastic. Like $1,400 I did over that on Saturday alone.
Oh,
so
wow. That's so good.
That includes some big purchases that you're not going to get every day, right? Because those items are hard to find. So they demand big prices, and I just don't have those particular items in the booth. Like, I just don't have it's very hard to find. And those are oil cans. I had a White Rose outboard can, $245.
Wait. People are buying old oil cans? What the hell?
Yeah, dude, it's very, very collectible. Old Petrolia. You can even go on eBay. I actually underpriced that one, to be honest. They are going for about $300 on eBay. I seen a mint one go in auction for $500, and it's a White Rose outboard. Yeah, it's got good graphics on it. It was in good condition, but it wasn't minty by any means. Gargoyle oil. That can was $200, and I had City's Service Oil, $125 on it, and a Brico, and they were those 2 bigger ones. I probably should have asked more because they were in great condition. But yeah.
That's really amazing. Like, that's the stuff I don't know anything about and I haven't touched. I see them show up in auctions, and I'm like, what's old oil cans? I understand there's a huge collecting market. It's like that, and like old cigarette boxes, all these vintage tins. Like, that's so out my wheelhouse. But I see that at the auctions. But even I know, like, for tins, I mean, for oil cans, it's a big deal. It was a while ago. I was in Saskatchewan, and I was talking to an old farmer out there, and it's like, yeah, I threw out so much of that stuff in the farms.
Yeah.
And he said, I wish I could have all those tins back. It would pay for my retirement, just on all the old tins I used up. But,
yeah, well, the oil, anything oil, petrol is very collectible. Signs, cans, all sorts of stuff out there. But they're not all the same. Like, you just can't go buy an oil can and say, I'm going to get $200 for this. A lot of them are worth $10 or less. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's certain ones out there you kind of have to learn. I learn as I go along. But these ones, I paid $50 a piece too, right? So, there's $200 on the 4 of them. But I mean, hey, one of them paid for them all, and the other 3 were just profit. So it's nice when that happens.
So that sounds like an interesting week you've had.
So what about your week, Carl?
So for me, it's been pretty good. Like, things have slowed down a bit like I expected. eBay sales were down to about half of what they were the previous week, but that's okay because it was so good the previous few weeks. The big thing for me is we were having a energy assessment done in the house, which was supposed to happen in like late February. And then they called me on Saturday saying, "Can we do it on Monday?" I'm sure you can understand that my basement was not ready for someone to walk through, let alone do an energy audit. So I had to move everything around. People can't see because it's not visual, but there's a bunch of boxes and guitars, and you can't see all the crap that's around the floor around me because I had to suddenly make a lot of room for someone to come in. Well, that took a lot of my time, to be honest, in the last week. But also, I had to Frankenbox another train to go out. So that was fun. But yeah, it was a good week. It's like I saw my friends at the thrift stores. That's what I really enjoy too. I'm trying to spend a little less time thrifting right now and trying to get the stuff I have up, which is probably going to be like the same thing I'll say every week for another 6 months to a year. Wouldn't it be great to have like no inventory to list? Like that to me is such a foreign concept. I know some people can do it, but I just like the buying is so much more fun.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you can really not have inventory to list. I think I always have inventory to list. Or put in the booth, one or the other.
Yeah.
I think I have to keep that kind of overflow just because of the booths, right? So I have a weekend like I just had where it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much more room that opens up, let alone, and I'm not talking just the week, I'm talking the weekend. So, if I go in once a week, my booths are going to be empty. I really have to get in there at least twice a week. Right now it's every day throughout the week because I'm trying to take good stuff, right? I don't want to just take anything to the booth. Like I don't want to take a whole box and then pour it out in the booth. Some of the stuff in the box is garbage. Some of the stuff is going to go to eBay, and then some of the stuff goes to the booth. So it all has to be organized. But no, overall, everything's been going good. I got 4 items going out today, 2 on Etsy, 2 on eBay. And so that's pretty good. Like, I mean, that's a good day. If I get 4 or 5 items, that's a really good day for me right now in my 500 plus listing on eBay.
I probably sell about 2 to 3 items a day at most. Yeah. I'm pretty happy with that, actually. I don't really feel the need to go and make huge piles of boxes and send them off.
I personally, the more the better. If I have to start hiring someone to kind of keep up, then that's where I want to end up being, right? So, but I'm in the beginning stages. Hopefully by the end of the year, I'm at that point. But right now, it's I get my 3 booths. I can start putting furniture in there. I can start putting good items down in there because I'm downstairs now. So that's going to increase sales just by being downstairs. So once I get all that set up the way I want it, then I start hitting eBay hard, and Etsy is just cross listing. Yeah, so the sky's the limit in my world. Like I just want more and more and more and more. I want to get a big warehouse. I want to be Amazon under Scott Sell Stuff. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I wouldn't mind a big warehouse. A couple people working for me, doing a lot of the stuff, and I can do the picking. That's kind of the goal. Yeah,
that's the dreams.
Anything else, Carl, before we get into today's topic?
No, that's it. Let's get into the main topic. What are we talking about this week, Scott?
Okay, well, I thrift stores, thrifting, right? Like everybody loves the thrift stores. I don't know. I really don't like it, but there's a few that I like. You know what I mean? Like it's weird. I will not drive. I will drive 5 hours for a good yard sale or estate sale. But I won't drive, half an hour to a thrift store. I have my reasons for that, but
what are those reasons? Well, that's what we're here for, right?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's overpriced.
Overpriced
in a lot of ways. You have to.
I've heard that overpriced thing since I started 4 years ago.
Yeah,
and now I've gone to the point where I'm also saying it's overpriced. Does that just mean we're like old guys who are like, I remember back in the day paying $1.99 and
like
a stereo system.
Yeah, I don't know. Overpriced to me, I compare it to what I have access to on a majority basis. I compare it to yard sales. I compare it to private picks and estate sales.
Yeah,
and I also, for me, it's the profit margin. I don't want to pay $20 to make 50. You know what I mean? To me, that's not there because once you make your 50. Then they're taking off anywhere from 15 to 25% on the selling end too, right? So you're actually profiting maybe $20 to have 20 bucks invested into it doesn't, it's not my style, because some things don't sell. Sometimes things take a long time to sell. Um, I like to have a couple of bucks for 50, maybe 20 bucks if it's 100 or more in
Yeah.
value. Um, so that's when I say it's overpriced. Is it really overpriced if somebody was collector or wanted it for their own place? Absolutely not.
Well,
But
let's talk about the thrift stores then,
okay.
because that's our subject. And uh, I know for people who are listening, you probably have access to different thrift stores, but there is some variation that I think I've heard carries over quite a bit. So here in Ottawa, we have access to Value Village, Salvation Armies, the Mission thrift stores, the Restore, or is it Restore? Yeah, Restore thrift stores, and then a few odds and ends.
Oh, we got Goodwill.
Yeah, we don't have Goodwill here. They
Oh,
closed even before I started. Goodwill closed.
okay. We have a few Goodwills here. Um, I think my favorite though are the mom and pops. Like, I
Yeah,
don't mind Goodwill. The Goodwills that I've gone through here, like if I go to Brantford or Tilsonburg, they don't charge the taxes or anything like that, right? So, um, but Salvation Armies I've found to be priced high. The Value Villages kind of have someone picking a lot of the better stuff, and again, it may be what I like.
yeah.
So maybe you'll find some good deals on clothing, but I like the old stuff, and that seems to be very behind the counter type product. No,
I
that's
also
fine.
find Value Village can be very overpriced, and it is kind of funny.
I just think a lot of people don't. I don't want to put anyone down. I think they pay too much. I really do. I think there's so
Yeah,
much
you have
stuff
to be
out there.
careful.
So
Yeah,
if people go to thrift stores and keep paying those big bucks, they're going to keep pricing that way,
I
right?
was at
So
Value Village this week, and they were asking over $10 for board games that were not good condition. They
yeah,
definitely upped their prices for January. All that stuff is going to sit there because 99% of it's just modern games. Like, why would you buy something that for $10 used with good pieces missing, the box broken, when you can buy it new for 15 or 20, right? Like, it is crazy.
yeah.
But
But you're a thrifter, so we should be listening to you. You're like
yeah.
you're the pro thrifter in my mind.
So I guess what we're going to talk about is like our opinions of the different thrift stores out there. So we can start with Value Village, and I can give my opinions on why I
Okay.
do Value Village at the same time, right?
All right.
So I think Value Village and Goodwill, I have a feeling they're similar. I don't really know, but for me, I like thrifting because there's not a lot of pressure, because I don't have to negotiate the price. The price is there. I can take my time going around the store. Sure, there's competition from other resellers, but it's good for Value Villages. I really, you have to be aware of each one is slightly different, and the neighborhood they're in makes a big difference, because most people who are donating items to the Value Village are going to do it at a location that's close by, obviously. And so here in Ottawa, we have different variances at the city of, like, in terms of wealth. That doesn't necessarily mean though that you always want to go to the richest areas, because some of those richest areas, like in Canada that we have here, are really new. So if you're into the vintage stuff, you're not going to find as much. But that being said, the most valuable things I found in thrift stores were both in Canada. But that being said, I don't find a lot in the Canada one. So you have to kind of get a feeling for what you want to sell and which Value Villages tend to get that. The other big thing with Value Villages too is that some of them tend to be overpriced. And for here in Ottawa, we have one near Searville, which I find is crazy prices. Like, they'll want $20 for things that sell new for 15. Once in a while, something will slip through the crack though, and you'll see that some resellers that are there all day because they know that even though it's annoying with those prices, it's still worth their time. One other tip I would have for Value Villages, especially, and Goodwill is probably the same, is they have what they call production, and that's when they're pricing all the donations they got, usually from the day before, putting them on carts and putting them out. And different stores will have different times when they put out the fresh inventory. they don't have a, at least from my experience, the Value Villages don't have a flat time. Some of them like already have all the stuff out on the shelves first thing in the morning. Some of them are putting stuff out at 1 o'clock. Some of them at 10 o'clock. Sometimes 11. Like, it's really, if you're going around during the day or the week, it's really good to know when those production times are.
Yeah. I find Value Village overpriced.
Yeah.
That being said, I have found things in there before, but I very rarely go. If I'm passing one and I got some time, I'll think about it and possibly stop in. Salvation Army, kind of the same thing. I find a lot of them have, uh, I don't know, for whatever reason, are they privately owned? Are they kind of like a franchise type thing where the owners kind of cherry pick the good stuff out of there?
Well,
That's
Salvation
kind of,
Army is quite different. It's kind
yeah,
of they are different.
yeah, they are different for sure. But Goodwill to me kind of has a fair, and I'm going to say fair in that sometimes I'll find stuff out of Goodwills,
Yeah.
and Thrift on Fire, who was on our YouTube channel the other day, he does the bins, the Goodwill bins.
Right.
And because of him, I went and did that once, and it actually wasn't that bad. Like, for being a rookie and not really knowing the process and just kind of stepping in it for the first time,
Right.
you're paying per, by the pound, right?
That's
Like,
such a weird concept to me. Yeah.
it's very weird. But if you're into clothing, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So that wasn't too bad, and I did okay, but it really wasn't my thing, and I don't know clothing well. So, I ended up picking a few things up that weren't worth a bunch, and I'm probably sure I left things there that were worth money that I didn't know. So, probably favors people who are into clothing.
Yeah. We don't have any of those bins. Like, that's definitely a Southern Ontario thing. I'm not sure how they handle that. I don't know if they ship. I kind of wonder if they ship everything from all the stores to that one location. It's kind of the
Probably,
last hurrah for those items before they completely get destroyed.
probably because the place that I went was in London.
Yeah.
We were already there, and I thought, hey, let's just stop by and see what happens. So, and that whole facility, that's all that it was. They had a big warehouse in the back, and they would bring things out. There was no buying it other than through the bins. That was
Is
the
that
only way.
Goodwill who runs that?
I'm pretty sure that was Goodwill. Yes.
Okay, that would explain why we don't have Goodwill here. So obviously you
Okay.
can't have bins if we don't have Goodwill. So
And I think the ones I do like, and I have my two in particular that I do attend when I'm in those areas, and one of them's here, so I'm always in this area. Probably actually three, and but two I favor the most, and those are the mom and pop ones. Those
right.
are just a little business. Someone started it up. Sometimes they don't last that long. These ones
No.
seem to have had lasted longer. They've been around for a bit, but the one has gone through management twice.
Oh wow. Okay.
So when I say management, I should say owners,
Yeah.
because an owner sold it to someone else and then they just sold it off now. So whether they're trying to drum up business by having cheap prices, personally, I just think they don't care. They don't know their stuff. They're not looking to research it. They just, hey, this is a yard sale type style, right?
Oh, that's the
So
best. Like,
yeah,
we
there's
don't have
no
a lot of those around here. I did notice a new thrift store opening here in Ottawa, but I haven't even bothered to go to look at it because I think it's mostly clothing.
yeah.
But mostly it's not that style.
Yeah, and they were the busiest I've ever seen it. They were busier. They were the busiest of all three,
Huh.
and it was since they've changed management and gone to this style. It was a really busy day. So
So one thing, going back for a second, I want to talk about the Salvation Army and how it's different from Value Village. At least in my experience here in Ottawa, there is a big difference. The Salvation's Army here in Ottawa tend to have a lot of old stock. They tend to get piled up. Once in a while, they might have a clean out, but like Value Village has like a thing, like I think every month or so, they'll get rid of the old color for the tags and they'll get rid of all that inventory. With the Salvation Army, stuff can be on there for at least 6 months or even longer. So when I go into the Salvation Army here, which I do, but not nearly as much as Value Village, they don't have the same turnover as Value Village has. And I prefer the high turnover of the Value Village because you just have a higher chance of good inventory. The other thing with the Salvation Armies here is that, well, one thing is you don't pay tax, so I guess you have that. But there also, I find Value Village and Salvation Army both have like glass cases, and they're both overpriced. But Salvation Army can be crazy overpriced, like 3 or 4 times what the items actually are worth. At the same time, my gut feeling is that Salvation Army does not put a lot of research into what they're putting out.
Well, I think from my experiences, they have 1 or 2 people that set the prices.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the old stuff. And they could be out to lunch. They could be, if you hire someone to do that, they could be misinformed, right? They might think they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between researching on eBay to find a price, and researching and knowing a quick sale price. Because if it sits around for a long time, it's actually depreciating. And I don't think a lot of people understand that, because you're paying for that floor space. If it's sitting there for a long time, it's actually depreciating. So you kind of find that magic number of where you're maximizing your profit, but you're selling it before a certain date in order to prevent it from completely losing all its value. You know what I mean? Through paying rent and stuff. So if they got someone that's out to lunch and doesn't understand that, they're not doing the store a service. And that's when you're going to get stuff that's hanging around for a long time.
And that's a good point too, is that each store has their, like you said, usually there's a few individuals who are actually pricing stuff, and they have their strengths and weaknesses. For example, one of the stores here insanely overprices teacups. Like they want 25 to 100 to $50 sometimes for teacups. It doesn't matter if it's a plain teacup or a fancy teacup. They're just like, oh, I know that teacups can have a lot of money, so I'm going to put $25 on that teacup, and it'll just sit there. Like, I won't generally shop for teacups at that store, because even if I do find one, the price I'm going to have to pay is so high, it's insane. But then you'll have other stuff in the store that they don't know, and they discount and say, oh, that has no value. And so you kind of, like, for me, my experiences with the different Value Villages, at least, is that some stores have blind spots, and if you can learn them, it gives you a better chance of finding stuff that they haven't overpriced.
Yeah, it's a good point. I do agree that, and here's what I mean by they're out to lunch.
Right.
So they might know the value of certain things, or in the case of the teacups, I think they don't know anything. They know that some teacups can go high, so they'll just price them all high. And then what are they going to do? Okay, whatever doesn't sell, we'll throw out.
They don't care.
They don't realize that you paid somebody to stock that shelf with those items.
Yeah.
That area of that shelf is basically non-existent, because anything on that spot isn't selling because you priced it super too high. So now you've lost money that you're going to gain on the ones that you accidentally priced correctly, and less people are tend to going to go back. So now you're losing sales because people aren't going to go there now, because it's like they're crazy. You know what I mean? So now you've lost not only money on the stuff you sold, you're losing money on the stuff that you didn't sell because you had to pay people to put it there, and you're wasting space. Now you're losing sales on potential buyers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I don't go to one location, because it's like, whenever I go there, everything's overpriced. I'm going to stop going.
So how stupid is that? You know what I mean? That's what I mean by out to lunch. I know that there's people in the antique store that do the same thing. There are prices. Now, I'm not talking about good, rare stuff. I'm talking about everyday stuff that you're going to see in 5 or 6 booths, right? Yeah. So if you got good, rare stuff, you price it accordingly, and that's how you do it, and that works for guys that know what they're doing. But there's people there like me. There's a lot of stuff that we're competing against everybody else in the store. You want to be competitive. Now, you don't want to bring down the price of everything in the store. So you kind of have to be careful of that too. There's a lot of variables involved. It's not as easy as you think, but it's not hard either. You know what I mean? So you're competing against other people that have similar items in the booth. There's booths that I'll walk by There's booths that I'm going to walk by because they're too high. And there's other booths I'm going to jam to because they're right in the wheelhouse that I can either buy and make a profit, or people who are in there to collect will buy because it's more affordable. You know what I mean? So you got some people doing very well and some people not even making rent. So
I think some of the behavior we see is based on lack of knowledge, the fear of losing out. Like, well, if I put that teacup out for $25 and it's worth $10, well, maybe someone will buy it. It's
you know what they are, Carl?
What?
They're resellers. And you know what they didn't do?
Research?
Evolution. I don't know. Everything behind the counter, even though it's overpriced for me, might not be necessarily overpriced for, like, if it's hitting eBay prices, it's really not overpriced. It's going to be what I would price it at, but it's overpriced for me to resell, right?
Generally, yes. I still look, though, because once in a while there is something. Well, sometimes they put stuff behind the counters like they're asking $5.99 for. It's like, why do you have this behind the counter?
Yeah.
Like, that drives me nuts because I can't even see it. It's so far away.
Yeah.
I think sometimes they know something's vintage and that's good enough for them to put it behind the counter, even if like not everything that's vintage is worth money.
And sometimes they don't consider all variables too, right? Like you mentioned games. Like, so if you put an item back there that is broken, chipped, missing items,
they don't care.
Condition means a lot too, right? And they don't. They might just have a blind eye. Oh, this is selling for this, but they don't understand that it's not mint. It might not be new, like their item, right? So it's not very comparable, right?
No. And Value Village will happily, and this happened to me, happily put empty boxes out on the shelves with garbage in them.
Really?
They won't even know. I just this week I came across what was it? It was a piece of stereo equipment or like a filter or something, and I opened it. Oh, I remember now. It was a light fixture, like a high-end light fixture that would have been $150. I opened the box, and it was this old, crappy, broken, old light fixture that they put the new one up, right? The person who owned it, and put the old, crappy one in the box that was damaged and broken, and donated that. And then the Value Village put it out like it valued like it was a brand new one. But I've also had an encounter where I bought a bunch of toys and then I went to the counter from the baggie wall and they were all box Lego kits, just little ones. And I said, can I open this? Because it feels like there's nothing in here. So I opened it in front of the manager. We opened the bag and inside the box was just a piece of paper. And that was it. There's none of the Lego. And she was pretty embarrassed because she said, oh, they're not supposed to do that. They're not supposed to do that. You know, they're supposed to check before they price stuff. But I tell you, that happens all the time. And I have been stung by buying things and it's like I didn't check and then getting stung. So you have to realize too that a lot of the people who are working at the back at the thrift stores, they make what they're making, and it doesn't matter if they're doing it properly or not, like especially the non-management staff. So you can't just trust what's happening. But sometimes, you know, like that goes to your advantage too. Like I was just talking to someone yesterday and like we get frustrated without finding stuff, and then all of a sudden you'll like find a huge bag full of Warhammer figures for $5.99, and you're like, how did this happen? Like
it keeps you coming back.
These are worth like $20.
Yeah,
it keeps the gambling going.
Yeah.
But to go back to the thrift stores, I just want to mention there's a couple of other ones around here. At least there's the Mission ones. Do you have the Mission thrift stores?
Brantford has a Mission one, and St. Thomas does. Yeah,
right. So here, in my experience, is they don't have a lot of good stuff. I don't know why that is. It just is very boring items. It's weird. But they do have auctions. Salvation Army used to have auctions as well, but they got rid of them during COVID. So I will check out the Missions to see if I can buy anything through their auctions. One of my favorite early buys was actually a Mission auction where I bought a whole bunch of naughty manga DVDs that someone had donated to the Christian Mission store, and they might want to get rid of. I sold some of those things for like 30, 40, 50 bucks. That was one of the things that got me hooked on this reselling. I was like, oh, this is easy. This is great. But yeah, the Mission ones I don't go to very often. We also had the Restore one. Is it Restore?
Restore, yeah.
Restore. I remember the first time I went there, I went to the teacup section. I found like a $200 teacup. And
Yeah.
I thought, oh, this is great. But I haven't found anything since.
Yeah.
So I only hit that one once a month at most.
The restore here is gone ridiculously expensive. Like they want
Oh,
old beat up wooden shelves that are that pegboard, not pegboard, where they all glue press
circle
board,
board? Yeah.
and
Board, yeah.
and they want like $200.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think I can go to Canadian Tire and get it for 160, and they want 200, right? So it's silliness.
It's mixed.
So I don't even really go in there. But what is kind of your favorite place to go? Your number one go to once you walk in the door.
When I walk into the door, I usually head over to the toy section, the baggy wall.
Yeah.
With toys, because I really like toys. Like for one, I've researched them enough to kind of know what to look at. Usually they're fairly cheaply priced because they get so many of the toys. Also, the nice thing about the baggy wall is you never know what you're going to find in those little bags. Sometimes like you'll have one little toy in there. A good example, I don't even think I mentioned it to you, but I sold another one of those Monster in My Pockets.
Oh, nice.
3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And people don't know they're highly collectible. And there's some Canadian ones that are rare. I can't remember how much I got for it, like $90 American or something. And I'm sure that little figure was I got 85 American for it. So that's nice. Like 100 Canadian. And that was just in a baggy wall, right? Like in that toy section in the bag. That was probably the only reason I bought the bag, and that paid for like 20 bags, right? So I enjoy that section. It is a gamble when you're buying those bags. And the other thing was, when you buy those toy bags, make sure you donate the crap. Don't hold on to it. It can overwhelm you. That's my first place. The other one I kind of like is electronics section. I'll check that out because I'll look for sometimes put cameras there, but not often. But I do a lot of remotes, so I'll look for remotes. I'll look for video game connectors. Sometimes they're hidden in there. Voice recorders and that sort of stuff.
So you're hitting kind of like the baggy walls in the electronic section.
My baggy walls are my favorite because, for one, it's all small stuff.
Yeah.
And number two, there's a high turnover rate. And it's easy to ship, easy to list, and there's high value in a dense item. So
and a lot of people won't know what those kind of things are because they kind of see a lot of, like, although not every remote by any means is worth money, they see a lot of remotes. So they just kind of throw them up there with a $5 price tag, and you know which ones are worth $40 to $100.
That's right. They can't be bothered to figuring out which remote is a really good remote. I haven't seen Value Village do that yet. I've seen them do that with toys.
Yeah.
Try to guess, but not with remotes.
Definitely toys. I will do that yard sale estate. I'll do that everywhere. I'll look at toys for sure.
Yeah.
So when I hit the mom and pops, I pretty much just do a complete circle. Like I just go from one end to the other in that order. If I'm at a Goodwill, pretty much do that too. Because I'm just thinking there's only a few that I do go to.
Yeah.
And each time I'm kind of doing the same thing. And if I go to Value Village, though, I usually go to like the counter and just to see if there's anything there, because I do like the older stuff and that's where it is. Then I'll run along the wall to the art just because it's right next to it. And then I'll go straight back to the toys. I'm starting to dabble into clothing. I haven't really done that yet. As far as a Value Village or something, to me, that's a little overwhelming because there's just so much clothing.
Wow. There's a lot of people looking through it too, I find.
And I like to spend like maybe 15 to 20, 25 minutes at the store. I don't want to go longer than that. So clothing would take probably 2 hours to go through the clothing properly.
Yeah.
So it's not really my thing right at this point. I don't know enough about it. I will dabble in it and start learning it. And then I guess maybe when I feel, I have enough knowledge to make it worth my time, maybe I'll do that route. But really, honestly, it's kind of auctions, estate sales, and then through the warmer months here in Canada, I do the yard sales.
Yeah.
I think the private picks too.
And the private picks. Those are all good too. I think for the other areas I check in the thrift stores is the mugs and teacups.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Teacups can be amazing, but there's a lot. Honestly, there's competition everywhere in the store. There's never anywhere you're not going to see it. But I've done really good with mugs. I can pick them up pretty quick. The hint is look for anything colored inside the mug. That seems to be a good chance it'll be a Starbucks mug, and then it's worth checking out. The teacups I can pretty well spot because the more color, the better. I also like looking for things like tarot cards. So I'll go through the knickknack section of the store, and I'll go through that slowly because like the knickknack baggy section is kind of their catch-all for everything that's left, and you never know what you're going to find in there. Like I'll find what I just this week I found a calculator, a TI 84 calculator. That's the first one I found in a long time. But last time I checked, they sold for about $40 or $50. That will be on that wall for stationery. But really, that wall, you never know what you're going to find. So I like that one as well. I also take a very quick look through the kitchen appliances. So there's some items in there like milk frothers I look for that you might find there as well. Reasonably priced because they can't tell the difference between a good milk frother, for example, and a cheap one. I also like going through like the glass cabinet, like you said. I also will look at the pots because some of the best things I found have been pots, but I don't do a ton of that. I need to learn that a bit more, and it's not exactly the most thrilling thing to do is looking through the pots and pans, is it?
Yeah.
I do
I like the books too, though. Do you go through the books?
The books, I look for anime books, manga.
And Folio Society books?
I don't. And I must admit, like that's kind of probably a weak point for me.
Okay.
I've been watching J Ride, and he's been talking about doing sunglasses. Do you go through the sunglasses?
I used to. I haven't in years. Like, I think when I first started, I watched Craigslist Hunter, who watched someone else who basically that's all they did was glasses, not just sunglasses, but eyeglasses, and they'll just pop out the lenses and switch them.
Yeah,
because there's high end glasses
yeah.
like Ray-Bans and different things like that, right?
So
I know people will do that. I tried to do that once, but again, it's just I don't know what it is. I get into those big box stores and I just kind of like get a headache.
It's not your thing.
It's not my thing at all.
And like for some people,
who do I negotiate with? You know what I mean?
I don't want to negotiate with everyone. This is great.
I'm going to buy these 5 for $10. I don't know. You got 20 on them.
No, like doing the awkward silences and negotiation techniques.
Yeah, I wanted
and ahhing and like throwing in a couple of extra stuff. You just pay the price. You leave. Great.
Yeah, I there's no one to negotiate with, so it's not fun. But
I know with the book section too, there are people who go through with scanners.
Yeah,
and they'll just scan all the UPC codes and pull out the good ones. But that doesn't mean there isn't stuff in the book section. It's just I don't spend. I look for the manga.
Yeah,
and honestly, I look for graphic novels just for myself to read.
One thing surprisingly though, and I guess maybe they just don't put them in there, but is old books, like books that definitely don't have barcodes on them. 1800s, that kind of stuff. Like I rarely see that kind of stuff, and I'm sure they get tons of it. But they probably do. Yeah, they probably just throw it out because I've never seen that in the book section. It's usually more modern books with barcodes.
Oh, I was there when my buddy found something 18th century.
Yeah,
late 18th century book. It was like, what the hell is this doing on the shelf? But he found it. He's really good at picking out art too. It's like I'll walk right by and won't see it, and he'll like, oh, here's a 18th century or early 19th century frame with and I'll like, I didn't see it. I missed it. He has that eye for it for some reason.
He might just be bullshitting you too, Carl.
No, he wasn't bullshitting me. I can see. He shows it in front of me, and God damn it, I missed it.
So let's move on to our last section of this. Then and now, and what do we see their stores going forward? So I guess we'll start off with the good old days. What were the good old days like?
Well, I never set a foot into a thrift store until I was into my late 40s.
Okay.
I don't think I'd be like, why would I on earth go in there? So I don't have the experience from the guys 20 years ago, but I think in the past, they just would put stuff out without really doing any research at all, is what I've been told.
Yes, I would I would agree because they didn't have the resellers that they do now. I think resellers kind of taught them to start looking after their stuff. That's my opinion,
Yeah.
right? So, from what I understand, and again, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm kind of relatively inexperienced when it comes to thrift stores, um, like compared to a lot of people. But um, it used to be a place where you would donate your stuff, and it would be like considered secondhand for people who couldn't really afford the newer stuff, right? Like, so you go in there and try to get some cheaper stuff. But obviously, resellers started learning quickly that there's stuff in there that they can sell for more values.
Technology's made a huge difference because now you have a bunch of people like me walking through the store with their cell phones and are able to look up the values of stuff, where before we would have to go off our gut. That's and now I can just go in and I can scan UPC codes with my phone and it'll tell me how much something is worth.
Yep.
Right. So that's really, it's been around for a while now, but really the last 5 years, I guess. It's hard for me to tell because I've only been doing this for about 4 or 5 years. But that's made a big difference in the thrift stores.
Yeah,
And,
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Google Lens. Like, you don't even need to scan a UPC code, right?
Yeah, you just take a picture of it, 100%. So where do you see it going from here? Like, do you think thrift stores are kind of they're maxed out now? Like, they're like they're on to people are on to them, so they really have to kind of just flatline from here on? Or do you think, which isn't a bad thing? I mean, they're still making profit, but there's not really much room for them to increase prices other than with inflation. Or do you think differently?
So in my opinion is it's gonna be like, like with Tim Hortons, everyone said the quality of Tim Hortons coffee has gone down, the quality of the donuts has gone down. Tim Hortons are going to be in trouble, but every time you drive by Tim Hortons, there's still like a lineup outside the drive-through all the way to the back.
Yeah, I've never agreed with anything you just said. I go to Tim Hortons all the time.
Well, let me put it in other circles. People said this, and it's just like with thrift stores. I think it's the same. People say, "Oh, prices are too high. People are going to stop going." But I can tell you, if you go on a Tuesday, it's full of people, right? I think, they're always going to miss stuff, at least for the immediate future. It's hard to tell what's going to happen, with technology improving. But this, because what's happening in the United States is sometimes some people in some areas don't go to thrift stores at all because they take all their donations and they put them online. But if those stores aren't careful, you're going to bite the hand that's feeding you, because if people never find anything in the thrift stores, they're not going to go and donate to the thrift stores to get coupons and stuff like that, right? But who knows? Like, I think I'm hoping things are stabilized. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot less competition, so maybe that will stop them from increasing the prices, because it's hard to tell like how many thrifters are really out there. But I have a feeling a lot of people are realizing you can't make as much money as you might think doing this. Like, when you compare this to a salary, I'm not talking about, you or me or in particular, but for a lot of people, you make a lot more money just doing a normal salary position because the amount of time it takes to drive around. And so I think there was a big, like, COVID made a big jump in sales. And I think a lot of big companies saw dollar signs in their eyes. And the next year or two is going to like show the reality of like, there's only so much people are willing now to pay for stuff online. And that's going to like dampen things, at least for a while. That's my opinion. Well, how do you think?
I think if they price it too high, they're not going to have the resellers there. And I kind of look at it like this. I think if you're a reseller and you started off thrift stores and then you kind of do some yard sales, that kind of thing, I think you kind of see all all resellers in your eyes. You know what I mean? So if I'm a yard sale guy and I started at an antique booth, I kind of see the process of resellers through my eyes. So I think you kind of see it differently based on how you went. So, like, if you wanted to be a police officer,
right,
and you went to college and then university, or you went to university and then you got in, that would be one thing. Or if you went to a cadet system or with the military, you would advise people to do it the way you do it. You know what I mean? You would say, this is what worked for me. I went to the military. I was 5 years in the military. I got out. I got a policing job right away, that kind of thing. If you went to university, you would say, hey, the best thing I did is I went to university for criminology and I learned so much there. That's the way you should do it. And
Right.
if you went and you were a farmer and you just applied one day and you got on, you would say, hey, listen, I just applied. I got on. That's the way you should do it. Why spend money at criminology? Why go spend 5 years in the military? You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's based on your experiences. And once you're there, you can give advice, but the advice you're giving is basically the route that you got there. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is reselling, I think if you're a reseller and the way you got there is through thrifting, but thrifting has changed so much that it makes it hard to do. I think you got to find different. You're going to find people starting it out in different ways. Maybe they'll hit yard sales instead of going to thrift stores. You know what
Right.
I mean? So I think the future of thrifters going to thrift stores, and I guess this is a long-winded way of saying this, but I think how that's going to develop is you're going to see in 10 years from now, maybe more people aren't hardcore thrifters because they weren't given the option of starting there. You know what I mean? They're going
Yeah.
to tend to be yard sellers because you can still get those great deals, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I think the future of it is how they treat people now. So there has to be those little carrots, you know what I mean, that people can gravitate to and remember, hey, I hit the thrift store. Every time I go there, I'm finding stuff. I'm going to keep going. You know what I mean? But if they price things too high and they disappoint people, I'm not going to say it's going to end completely for resellers, but you're going to find a dramatic decrease in the amount of people reselling that go and buy there. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, you're gonna get a lot less new people because, like, when I started, you would find stuff, and that kind of was the incentive to keep going. But if you go a few times and find nothing because everything's overpriced, or there's too much competition, whatever the reason is, you'll stop going. So there's gonna be a lot less people entering the market. And if they can get stuff at yard sales, then all of a sudden you're going to have a lot more competition in the yard sale aspect, and people will learn from doing yard sales, which is very different than doing thrift stores. Yeah, I agree with all that.
And I look at the store that's under management, and when they were there, and I should say ownership because it's not even manager. They sold it to another person who runs it now. When they were there
Yeah,
selling stuff at top price, there was hardly anybody there. I went there hardly ever. Just if I was driving by, I'm like, oh, let's go see what's going on. Let's see what I can find.
yeah,
But now I'm probably going to go once a week. I'm probably going to buy stuff. So they're going to clear out the inventory. I'm going to be more happy. People, it was fairly full for the small store that it was. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So I think they can dictate. They're almost like Pavlov dogs. You can train people to come back to your store, or you
yeah,
can train people not to come to your store. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah,
So I think right now the bigger box stores, they get that corporate greed involved, and they might not realize that they're training people not to come back. It'll be
yeah.
interesting to see. I think the amount of resellers that go there now probably have dropped tremendously, and I think if you're looking to be a reseller, I think you have to have many options other than thrift stores. I don't think you could be full time and be strictly thrift stores. What do you think on that?
Oh yeah, no. When I've actually counted the amount of time I've spent driving around and going through the thrift stores versus the amount of inventory I get, the numbers don't really make sense.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like, let's say your net is 50%. So say you want to make, I don't know, $200 a day, like what you would need as a full-time person. You really need to source like over $400 worth of inventory a day. I'm not sure if I could do that of profitable stuff and
Yeah,
keeping a 50% margin.
like
It'd be
I think the numbers have to be even broken down further because
yeah,
I think you have to base on what you're selling. Your return on investment is huge, right? So you might sell or buy $400 worth of stuff a day to make 200, but if
yeah,
you're paying $500 a day, you're not making anything. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think your return on investment has to be like I think if like I think you basically you can only pay a third. I think that's the max you could pay if you want to make profit, because there's so much going off on the selling end, and things could get broken, things could not sell. There's a lot of variables in between that could happen. People could want a discount, all sorts of things. And you have to be very strict on your buying. You have to make sure the item's in good condition. It's not broken when you get home. And sometimes that happens. So I even like to go a little bit lower than that, 30%. But I mean, that's kind of other than that, it's got to be something fantastic. It's got to be like this is going to sell within a couple hours, and or I got a buyer already type thing. But
the bottom line is, going to the thrift store is a bit like a slot machine. You go there, you pull the handle, you never know. Sometimes you're going to get nothing. Sometimes you're going to win the jackpot. Thrift stores can be a bit like that too. And that's probably what keeps us going a little bit too. We remember the big hits and forget about the days we spent just wandering around finding nothing.
Or a hobby, because you don't really have, if you go to a casino and you want to hit, you're going to have to dump a bunch of money in. But maybe it's more of a hobby, fishing. You go fishing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're there all day, you might not get a bite. Some days it's just fish after fish. So, you know what I mean? Or
I remember the gold rings I found metal detecting, which I had thankfully forgotten about. It was all the pull tabs I pulled over and over and over and over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of what I look at. It could be a hobby type thing. I think you have to have, and I don't think yard sales can be everything too if you want to go full time. Definitely yard sales and estate sales and private picks. Those are, that kind of stuff. But
we'll talk about all that stuff in the future. Those are great topics of how we deal with those things.
Thrift stores can definitely be fun. There's no question about that for sure.
My favorite.
Your favorite, eh, Carl? All right, guys. I guess we'll end it there. Any last words, Carl?
No, that's it. Like I always said, thank you for listening. I hope you leave us some comments. We always appreciate that. We got a few comments in the last one, and that was great.
Yeah, so, I enjoy reading the comments, and hit the subscriber button and tell a friend. Let them know that we're out there. We're on every Friday. We come on here on YouTube and Spotify. It is a podcast, so on YouTube there's no video; it's just audio. But anyway, that's about it. Just hit the subscriber button, and we'll see you next Friday.
Bye, everyone. Thanks a lot.